Now, government has opened up about the current challenges that are to blame for the recent unannounced power outages being experienced in parts of the country. It, however, is unable to say exactly when the blackouts will stop. Not every part of the country is experiencing the outages, which also do not follow a regular pattern.
It was around like last week, and it took around like only 3 to 4 hours. That's, if I can remember, just 3 to 4 hours.
This doom sorting is evolving again because it's about 2 weeks now. It's been on and off. I live in Committee 22, and it's been off and on. Like I've experienced like 2-3 times for about 2 weeks now.
The last time I had it was, I think, on Saturday. Saturday around 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Yeah.
It's very bad because we are not being informed. You are just there and all of a sudden the lights just go off, and the weather too as well, the heat, and you can't even sleep. It's bad.
Minister John Peter Amewu explains at a news conference in Accra inadequate supply of gas from Nigeria and the inability of Car Power and Sunan Osogli to operate at full capacity has resulted in the deficit in generation of between 50 and 300 megawatts of power at peak times when the most electricity is needed. Though he assures the situation will normalize, he is unable to say when.
No shortage yesterday, as available generation was 2,611 megawatts against peak demand of 2,330 megawatts. Ladies and gentlemen, today, 26 November 2018, Nigeria gas would start flowing at a low rate of 30 million cubic standard feet of gas, which will ramp up in a few days to about 80. So the system of supply in terms of gas from Nigeria has gradually been stabilized. Our major challenges, ladies and gentlemen, has been the incomplete reverse flow project to allow gas to flow from the east, from the west to the east. As you are aware, we have a lot of gas that's stranded up in the Takoradi area. And there will be a need for this gas to be conveyed through the transportation system to Tema to feed on some of the generators. We had to fast track it through a bypass which has been completed but not connected to the West African gas pipeline yet. This is as a result of the authority, which we call the WAGBA, which had not fully come out to agree on the tariff. In an earlier discussions, they intend to put the tariff price at 3.2 MMBTU, while the ministry insists on $1 MMBTU. The discussion has persisted for weeks, but I'm happy to announce that the authority on Friday, November 24th, 2018, the West Africa gas pipeline, the regulator has finally issued a final tariff notice of $1.7 per MMBTU.
He says, though government concedes there is a problem, it is willing to tackle it head-on. Mr. Amewu, however, maintains the situation is not as bad as it's been portrayed.
Anyway, it's very important that Ghanaians must realize that 1 week of power interruptions has drawn so much attention. For us as government, we extremely welcome, Ghanaians' stance on this particular issue. For 3 years, now we know 1 year, 1 week is very key. So it gives us, as people you put in to manage your resources, it puts us in a position to be very alert. And that is why we gathered here 1 week. For 2 years, this country has been off. So it's good, but I can show you that under His Excellency, we want things like this where we want to interact with the public and tell them exactly what is happening. Okay, and that is why we are speaking. We want to give you the assurance that we will continue to engage you and let you know what is happening in the system from now onwards.
Honourable Minister, would it be fair for me to say Doomso is back?
Well, when you put off the light, you say Doomso, isn't it? in the past 3 years, it was Dumkra. We are not in an era of Dumkra, okay? The lights may go off as we are witnessing, you know, but I can assure you that that long period that we envisage, that our opponent thinks that they want to capitalize on, that period will never come because we are managing the system.
He says a $2.8 billion debt in the energy sector has been reduced significantly, though more debts have been accumulated because of power supply agreements signed by the previous administration.
The sector debt has, you know, declined from $2.8 billion during the period to almost about $2.3 billion. So there's still a huge debt that is needed to be settled. So yes, of course, the debt, you know, it's there. ECG keeps on, you know, talking about its mounting debt. But as you are aware, again, the issues which has to do with the losses in the system has still not been totally resolved. You know, power theft, transportation and transmission losses, supply losses, losses generating from metering problem, and our own issues, you know, as Ghanaians, our inability to make sure that we adhere to the practices within the energy sector, stealing of power, power theft, are all contributing factors to where ECG currently is. So yes, of course, ECG debts are there, but the government, you know, it's making sure that some of these debts will be reduced. Government on its own, as you are aware, also owns heavily. Government's debt is as a result of some of the debts from some of our facilities, the municipal assemblies, district assemblies, the metropolitan assemblies, districts, ministries, you know, some hospitals. Cumulatively, this is also a burden, you know, on government. And that's why the policy direction for government is to make sure that we take out some of those strategic, you know, infrastructures out of the national grid and see how we can begin to put them on solar.
Now, my colleague Raymond Akwa, he covered that news conference and he's joined me in the studio for a bit more on what was said at that news conference. But also joining us on Skype right now is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Ben Boakye. Thank you very much, Mr. Boakye, for making time to join us. Now, is the Energy Minister being open with us as regarding the problems in the challenges in the energy sector, or there's more to that?
I think for what has just happened in the past couple of weeks, from last week, I think he highlighted what the challenges, the immediate challenges were, i.e. the supplier cuts from Nigeria, our own Jubilee fields, you know, as well as inability to secure HFO for the car power plants. But beyond these are, you know, the core financial difficulties that the power sector faces. And I think that over a period, the power sector has been on steroids, if you like, because ECG, that is the off-taker of power, is still not able to generate the revenues that are required to be able to service the industry, because all the other players depend on ECG. They need power, they need money to pay the generators, they need money to pay the transmitters. So if they are making losses, what that means is that they are not able to pay everybody along the chain, you know. And we are told that for the first half of the year, ECG made a loss of almost $1 billion Ghana cedis. So you project that in a year, they were making about 2 billion cedis of losses. And this is absolutely unsustainable. So it's continually going to demand that the minister once in a while will have to come and address us on why we have challenges. And we keep saying that as long as we have politicians coming to tell us why we have problems, it tells us the problem is not gone.
All right.
You know, we are only scratching the surface of the problem. And I think that is exactly what is happening now.
All right.
We still owe the generators money. So if tomorrow they say, because you owe them, they are not generating power, it will be a legitimate call.
Has there ever been, Mr. Boachi, has there ever been a situation where we don't owe the generators at all? Because the argument government keeps coming up with is the fact that we are working with these companies, and so we would consistently be owing them, but we would owe them, and yet we would also be paying them. So the debts are not going to be mounting. Essentially, we'll be clearing some of it. So is there going to be a case where we're not going to be owing them at all?
I mean, in every power system, there are debt management structures that work. I mean, you always have to owe somebody, but you cannot owe somebody for the supply, the tune of a year supply of power. You know, that is not how debt is managed in the power sector. If it's a 90-day debt, that will be allowed. If it's for 3 months, you need to be able to mobilize your bills and get the revenue from consumers and pay. That will be allowed. But if you are owing Car Power, for example, $200 million, that is just too much, for that to continue. You're owing AXA so much money. So those are the challenges. You continue to owe, but not at those levels. So it tells you that there is a need for us to have a broader conversation on how do we improve the sector to ensure that we don't accumulate that much debt.
All right, Mr. Boachi, please hold on for me. Raymond Akwa was at the news conference. I'm going to be finding out from him. Did this issue about the debts, the debts issue came up, but then about the financial sector challenges or the financial challenges in the power sector, did that actually come up? Because what Mr. Boachi is saying is that if their debt mounting, if ECG is piling up debts and making losses, we can't really maneuver our way, through this problem.
So these questions were posed to the minister. He sometimes asks sector leaders like the VRA, the ECG, to respond to them. There was a question directly asked about what has been the debt structure since you came into office since 2017. Then I narrowed it down to May 2017 and also October 2018. What has been the debt incurred within that space? First, the ECG said they had to go and reconcile the documents to be able to put out that figure. Then secondly, the VRA boss came out to say that, one, they don't owe NGAS. So the difficulty to supply has nothing to do with that.
All right.
Two, they do not owe any of the other power plants so that it will warrant them demanding some money from some other activity. Indeed, it's the usual plan of when you produce, then I pay you. That's currently in place. So far as they're concerned, all the debt that's currently in place is debt that was incurred prior to 2015, even going to 2016. So they have not added any substantial debt to it. They cannot be tracing the debt to this government's actions or inactions in this case. The minister then took up the question and said, this is true, that's the reality on the ground. But we are not oblivious of the fact that in our engagements with these institutions, there may come a time that we may have to owe them for a period of time. What we have done with the help of ISLA is to regularly update and clear these debts. So that's the stance of government on this one. Of course, there is legacy debt. They have reduced that legacy debt from $2.8 billion US dollars to $2.3 billion US dollars. And they're saying that so far as it is to do with their own tenure as NPP between 2017 and 2018, they've been able to make sure that any due payments are made in this case.
All right. So, Mr. Boachi, you heard what Raymond had to say about the Energy Minister's news conference. It appears, well, they say they've done something about it, but as far as you're concerned, they haven't done enough to ensure that we are completely out of the woods.
No, I think it will be interesting to hear that we don't owe these generators. That is not consistent with the information available to us. We know that they owe the IPPs beyond allowed thresholds. So those are current debts that are beyond what was inherited. So the fundamental question is, when is ECG going to be able to raise enough revenue to offset at least the operational cost of the entire sector? If that doesn't happen anytime soon, then we'll always continue to accumulate some debt. And that is exactly what is happening even at this point.
Regarding
we have to verify it.
Regarding the ECG being able to clear its debts, I believe that's how come we're having the Millennium Challenge Corporation bringing on the Meralco, that's supposed to be a private sector player.
Yes, I mean, that is a positive one. But if you look at the entire arrangement with Meralco, what Meralco is going to do is to take up the power that they need to distribute. But we now have a situation where by next year, there will be an excess power of close to 1,000 megawatts. So Meralco will not be responsible for that excess. Government has to create the demand through policy to ensure that these IPPs will continue to generate power and that they won't sit idle and accumulate capacity charges. Because the nature of the contract we have signed demand that once they are ready to generate and they don't, you have to absorb every cost or pay them the capacity charges that is due them. And that is a reality that we're going to face, come next year. Even now, we start paying for power we don't really need. And then comes the conundrum where you have power that is already expensive. And you have to, continue to engage industry to absorb, or demand more power. How do you do that? And that's what we recommended in our budget analysis, that the way to do it is maybe give the hydro, which is cheaper on VRA side, to industry, and maybe augment it with some of the thermals to create more demand, encourage more industry players to consume more power, so that you don't have IPPs idling, and you'll be able to consume the excess capacity. Else, that will come to add to the debt come next year, and we may have to support the power sector with our taxes.
All right. But Mr. Boakye, when that happens, it means that the consumers or the residential consumers are going to be depending on thermal power, which is more expensive, which will mean that their bills will go up.
Absolutely. And we have to do that. The earlier we do that, the better for us. Else, the debt will sit waiting for us. Remember what happened? When they accumulated $2.5 billion over the period, they put it on petroleum products in the form of ESLA for us to pay. So we need to buy the bullet, as soon as possible.
Right.
If we wait, it will still be waiting for us.
All right. Thank you very much, Ben Boakye. Ben Boakye is the Executive Director of ASEP, and Raymond Akwa is here in the studio with me. So we're learning also that even as these debts, we're having to deal with these debts. We also have a $20 million debt that's accumulating every month.
Yes, this is essentially, according to the minister, due to previous power purchasing agreements and plans we brought in. The agreement clearly could not be executed anytime soon because they only produce excess generation capacity. We don't need it now. We cannot sell it immediately, and they are costing us that amount of money every single month, around $20 million US. So that's also one of his fears, that will compound the current debt situation, that it's not as if they are generating anything for us to get some productivity from it, so that people are paying for it. It is just extra cost for no apparent job done in this case.
All right. Thank you very much, Raymond Akwa, joining us to help us out with the news conference addressed by the Energy Minister. You're watching JoyNews Prime. We're taking it. The minority in Parliament is accusing Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah of peddling falsehood when he claimed that there has been a reduction in number of workers at the presidency. At a media briefing in Parliament Monday, North Tong MP Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa maintained documents available to the House show the figure has gone up despite government's denial. He says the minority will engage a coalition of civil society groups to force government to reduce the number of staffers.
We wish to admonish the Honourable Minister for Information to remember that Sundays are holy days in Ghana and many parts of the world, and that if he so wishes to carry on this way, he should at least exempt Sundays. We do not expect him to be defiling the day by peddling falsehoods and half-truths at his Sunday press briefings. You heard the Honourable Minister of Information say yesterday that the Office of Government Machinery is undergoing a programmed reduction. we wish to emphasize that that claim can only be false. How can 1,614 in comparison to 998 be a programmed reduction? How? How is this possible? If Ghanaians did not accept 998 when news broke in March this year, what makes the minister believe that Ghanaians will embrace 1,614? In any case, the claim that 1,614 is surely a reduction because of the 2018 ceiling of 1,697 is rather erroneous. This is because the 2017 ceiling, as contained at page 177 of the 2017 budget statement, is 953. The report of 998 to Parliament confirms that this ceiling was exceeded by 45. If this track record is anything to go by, then one cannot be certain that there has, in actual terms, been a reduction from 2018 to 2019.
Majority MP for Asebu Elvis Morrison Donko is accusing minority MPs of taking loans from Maslock without paying back. Contributing to the debate on the 2019 budget statement, he claimed Maslock, under the watch of the NDC, gave out loans to leading party members who never paid back. Mr. Donko says the situation brought Maslock to the brink of collapse. He is urging the security agencies to go after such people and retrieve the monies to revive the center.
In the previous administration, they took so much money, they gave it out, and the money never came back. If this money had come back to the chest of Maslock, we wouldn't be at where we are today.
Give these monies out to who exactly?
Mostly, I know they gave it out to their party members, their party faithfuls. So, whoever that they gave these monies to, they need to pay back.
Just party faithfuls?
Yeah, according to the CEOs, he says some MPs, which I don't know, according to him.
Did you ask him for the names of MPs?
No, how can I? No, I read it.
To the extent that you were bold enough to raise it on the floor, you probably should have had those specific details.
Yes, because I don't have those names, the speaker asked me to withdraw and I withdrew. If you ask me now, the names, I can't really tell. But as I said earlier, I don't really care whoever took the money. The money is for the people of Ghana. Whether it's A or B, it's the president, it's whoever, the money needs to be paid. Since if it's being paid, if we pay the money, we can resource other people, the less privileged, to have access to this money to start and do something for themselves.
So, again, in reference to the MPs in particular, what's your expectation of Maslock and state security agencies in terms of what needs to be done to retrieve these amounts?
Yeah, so the state agencies need to do much to retrieve that money. And under the previous government, previously, the Maslock money will be in a bag. If I like you, I give you some. If I don't like you, you don't get.
But Minority spokesperson on Finance, Kasilato Forcing, denies the claim.
I am not aware, because it's the same chief executive of Maslock who informed all of us that their recovery rate is going up as compared to previously. And they've been able to recover huge sums of money as a result of loans that were lended to certain individuals and companies in previous years. So what is he talking about?
Virtually the same point, that so much of it was actually lended. Some of them went beyond the maturity period and wasn't paid.
It cannot be the case. It cannot be the case, because obviously the other colleague has come out to the chief executive of Maslock. What the guy was doing is just propaganda. I mean, I know him to be someone who engages in propaganda. So, but what I'm saying is...
But why is Maslock in trouble now? Because even the CEO made the point that they took over a very bad scheme, which they are now working to revive.
Maslock is in trouble because government over the last 2 years, 17-18, has failed to resource Maslock. In fact, in the year 2017, they performed no activity. No activity. So they were only using their money to pay salaries and sit down doing nothing. They are not working. It's not because of the portfolio. Because of the portfolio, they are actually recovering what is due them. So that is the reason why Maslock is in trouble. It's because of mismanagement.
In February this year, police and military deployed to Fuase in the Twima-Kwawoma district of the Ashanti region allegedly killed 4 people when they went there to maintain law and order. This followed a protest over relocation of a district capital. Till date, the families have resolved never to bury their loved ones until government investigates who killed them. While another victim, Stephen Insian, who is paralyzed because he was also shot in the spine, says he's yearning to die. Jojo Kobana brings you excerpts from JoyNews' Hotline documentary, As If We Weren't Human.
On 7th February 2018, residents of Fuase in the Twima-Kwawoma district of the Ashanti region protested the relocation of district capital Fuase to Twedie. The police and military teams were sent to maintain peace, but it turned tragic as 4 people were killed and many injured. Stephen Insian narrates that on that day, he went to run an errand for his church when he was shot.
So when I was going, there was a crowd making something like they were making noise, and when I got there, I stood there and called my friend, and he said he's around that area. I said, okay, I'm also here, so you should come and let us settle everything. That you should come and let us settle what he told me. And the police guys came, and the moment they landed, they just make shooting. So I was panicked. I couldn't go back, and I couldn't go forward. So I decided to find a place to hide. What I just seen is I was at the hospital and was paralyzed, and I couldn't do anything. So that is what all about what I can say.
Bedridden, he has lost the desire of living again. He wants to die.
Because aside near men to me and as you so no pain I mean no think the woo and kay mommy.
Four persons were killed by the joint police and military team: Douglas Adai, Kojo Ofori, Prince Apia Boateng, and Kweku Seth. Their families are buried in deep sorrow and have vowed never to bury them until they find out the truth behind these killings.
So, I was abandoning Abanaka and the Yensian. Ebesian.
Now, I know, I'm catching some moments here.
Say, intimacy, if you say, I'm Marano, and then Ranso, I will. And this will be said, what dear. I saw Nino, a casa, a man who said, was a what dear, answer. Now, if it preoccupy. What kuno? Not just say my family, my question, what China Casa, Miancasa, my tutu kuno. Was I by Chimiaco?
The University of Education Winneba has withheld the certificates of 176 students of the university. The action by the university follows what it describes as gross misconduct exhibited by the students in their study abroad program. Vice-Chancellor of the University, Professor Anthony Afu-Broni, says the misbehavior of the students nearly cost the university some damages. Richard Kojunyako has more.
The affected students will, for the next 6 months, not have their certificates. This follows a recommendation by a committee set up by the university to look into acts of misconduct by the French students who traveled on the study abroad program.
I am saddened to announce that of the 956 students being graduated today, management has had to take a painful but good decision to withhold the certificates of all the 176 graduating students from the Department of French Education for 6 months. This act of misconduct engaged by our dear students while in Lomé, Togo, brought the name of this great university into disrepute. We were almost at the brink of losing the scholarships for our year abroad because of the misbehavior of these students. Let it be further recorded that this sanction is as a result of thorough investigation by a duly constituted investigative committee of this university.
Chairman of the University Council, Professor Nicholas Abaka, chided the students not to allow the norm in the public service where many go to work, but they actually do not work, but allow social media to take the better part of their time.
In general, most workers, ranging from the CEO right down to the laborer, are often on the phone during working hours. Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagramming, LinkedIn, playing all kinds of games. For us, there's a heap of work on their desk waiting urgently for them to execute. Supervision of junior officers to work is discarded among other negative attitudes to work.
Meanwhile, the university says it is making progress with its infrastructure in order to expand their intake in 2020, when the first batch of the free senior high school students would be ready to pursue their tertiary education programs. Richard Kwejonya-Akon, Joy News, Cape Coast.
Star Ghana, as a multi-donor funded non-profit organization, has since its inception in the year 2010 supported civil society organizations, the media, community-based organizations, and the government to achieve many objectives. Now, after 2 phases of funding activities and projects in Ghana, Star Ghana is transitioning to an independent national entity known as Star Ghana Foundation, with a vision to have a well-informed and active Ghanaian citizenry able to contribute to transformational change that advances democracy, accountability, and social inclusion. The Star Ghana Foundation has been launched at Bolgatanga in the eastern region, at Bolgatanga in the Upper East region, from where correspondent Avasori reports.
Starting as a multi-donor pooled funding mechanism financed by UK Aid, DFID, Danida, the EU, and USAID, Star Ghana worked in 2 phases between 2010 and 2015, and then in 2015 going on to 2020. Within the first phase, Star Ghana supported approximately 157 organizations, including civil society, the media, community-based organizations, and the government, with a total budget of approximately $38 million. Currently, Star Ghana has supported over 232 partners, including government agencies, especially the Parliament of Ghana and the judiciary, with approximately $48 million. The second phase of Star Ghana programs will end in the year 2020, and the organization will then transition to an independent entity, Star Ghana Foundation. Speaking at the launch of the Star Ghana Foundation at Bolgatanga in the Upper East region, member of the Star Ghana Steering Committee, Professor Agnes Apusiga, said the foundation is for the ordinary Ghanaian.
So we have identified 5 thematic areas that we will be working on from now, and all of that is from the consultations that also the track record of the work that we have done in the past. And these include gender equality and social inclusion. We also want to look at inclusive governance and elections. We've done a lot of work during elections, but beyond elections, what do we do? How do we, on a daily basis, also work towards promoting inclusive governance?
Professor Ephraim Avia Nso is Chief Executive Officer for TERE, a local governance-centered NGO based in the Upper East region and a partner of Star Ghana.
TERE means change. Of course, TERE also means transformation. We are therefore happy to know that Star Ghana has come of age and is transforming from a donor-funded program to Star Ghana Foundation. This is in line with the President's vision of Ghana Beyond Aid and TERE's vision of seeing communities take charge of their own affairs.
Upper East Regional Minister Paulina Patience Abayage said the transitioning of Star Ghana to Star Ghana Foundation was in line with government's transformation agenda.
As a donor-funded program, you have worked to complement government efforts. Where government is not able to do enough, see and hear from the citizens, you have supported in that regard.
For Joy News, Albert Sorry, reporting from Bolgatanga.
We'll bring you sports news next. And that'll be all for the bulletin, but do stay tuned for our hotline documentary, As If Wearing Human. It follows right after this. Have a good night. My name is Israel Lyon.
This is JoyNews Prime.